negotiation class.
Yes.
And so thank y'all for being here. I know it was just my temperature when I walked into the room, but I know that not everybody likes it as cold as I do. Somebody said meat locker-ish. So I did turn the heat up just a little bit to make you a little more comfortable, but I do want you awake and present. So, so you guys do a lot of negotiation in this business.
Yes.
Who do you negotiate with? First, yourself.
Other agents.
Our sellers, other agents.
Vendors, other agents.
Yes.
I mean, you're kind of doing that all the time, aren't you? Yeah, so you're negotiating all the time. So let's start with the simple part, which is, let's define negotiation. What is a negotiation?
Win or no deal.
Win-win or no deal, that's why 4C15, I like it. That's good. Okay, so here's the other thing, is you guys know me well enough. You know I like participation. I know you went real internal on that question because you want to say the wrong thing. I don't ask trick questions. You know, I'm not gonna gotcha in front of the room, anything like that. So just like, what do you think negotiations means? What is
Meeting of the minds.
meeting of the minds?
Artful, back and forth, where both sides perhaps come to.
Back and forth, what was the beginning, the first word?
Like an artful.
Artful, I like that. I like there's a little finesse involved in that. It's not a science,
You don't go.
right? You don't always go, but sometimes.
Sometimes you might
have.
Finding a path.
That's usually further down the road.
Yeah, you devolve it into that. So finding a path forward for two parties, and then to just kind of finish that statement to add in some of these things to where there is an eventual agreement or meeting of the minds, something like that. Anything somebody would like to add to the definition? All right, so here's negotiation, strategic discussion that resolves an issue in a way that both parties find acceptable. So this is just one definition of it. And so, yeah, you guys all said exactly what that means. So what is the goal? So that is what it is. What is the goal? Like when you think about, I'm about to go into negotiation, what is the goal? Let's put it in respect of you on behalf of your client.
Price.
Price,
Price terms.
price term,
Just to arrive at a consensus between both parties.
to arrive at a consensus between both parties. Win-win, I like all of those. It's kind of similar to the definition, but different, because like negotiation is this conversation, communication, this path towards a meeting of the mind, win-win, acceptable resolution. What's the goal? So to close the deal. So all of those are not wrong. I think it's very important in the roles that we play in people's lives to understand what the goal of negotiation is. And it is my opinion that the goal of negotiation is to get what your client wants. And so we can put a lot of our own thoughts and feelings, perceptions, what we want into it, because let's face it, as an agent, I want the best price for my client. What if my pursuit of the best price for my client ends up in them not getting the house? And really the client wanted the house and was okay with the price. Was that a successful negotiation? Absolutely not. Like I had the wrong goal in mind. The goal, that underlying foundational goal, and you just have to keep this in mind because many times your client's goal, what your client wants, you might not completely agree with that. But we can get a better price, but I can get more for that. Or it may be, that's a good price, you need to take that. You know, I mean, like there may be, those are good terms. This is a good deal. This is exactly this checks all the boxes. You know, like you can get to that point where there are times when you are responsible for negotiations. You are the mouthpiece for your client. There's a reason why your buyer's not talking to your seller and your seller's not talking to the buyer. There's a reason. You're an intermediary, and one of your goals as an intermediary is to negotiate, and the underlying goal of the negotiation has to be to represent your client's wishes best and to get what your client wants out of that negotiation. We can put so much of ourselves into it.
It's important to acknowledge that a lot of times in any part of the transaction, it's not about the buyer or the seller. The agent influences that or gets themselves in the way. Yeah, and sometimes you've got to kind of work through that and try to figure out where is this really coming from.
You do, yeah. So getting to the bottom of whatever the driving force we're talking about behind those thoughts and comments and motivations and actions. And not, again, just not letting your own, because I mean, I know that a lot of me can creep into negotiations, but it's not me that needs to be creeping into my wants, my desires, it's the clients. Okay, so then the next part, and it was kind of mentioned a little bit already, is how do we show up? So how should you show up to a negotiation? Prepared. Hallelujah.
Willing to listen.
Willing to listen? Yes.
Flexible.
You have to ask a lot of questions to find out what you really want accomplished, because a lot of times, again, it's terms, it's not price. I mean, getting in a property when someone needs to get in, so they don't have a double roof or double storage costs is a lot.
Understanding where all that, so, and that's part of the preparedness, also part of knowing all of those things and understanding the client's needs. So in negotiations before, let me ask you ask a question a different way. How have you experienced other people show up to negotiations with you? Okay, so tell me about that, because that was a real reaction.
Rude and flexible,
Rude, did you say rude?
rude.
Rude, she
you know,
started with rude. and-
Flexible,
Yeah.
I'd say arrogant sometimes.
Arrogant.
I mean, I think that's all, from what we've been going through, that's gonna, of course, has already totally changed, but it's brutal.
So look, many times in negotiation, one side has more leverage than the other side. And so in our most recent real estate market, which side solidly has the leverage rested on? The seller listing side. Okay, if you were to say there's 100%, was it 50-50, was it 60-40 to the seller?
No, 100%.
70-30?
103.
Keep going.
About
Keep
110.
going.
The whole market was on its head. It was like 99-1. Let me tell you, a lot of ugly things surface in people who have 99% leverage. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Yes, and so character a lot of times is revealed when someone has the predominance of leverage in transaction. And so, but here's the thing with leverage, it almost always swings in the other direction. And so if you lose your mind when you have leverage, you're going to lose your reputation, and then when you don't have leverage, you're going to experience the result of it. We talked so much in the last couple of years to listing agents saying, be nice, just be nice. Communicate. I don't care if it's a group communication, communicate. Yes, there are 30 offers and you can still be nice. And it's like, there will be a time in the not too distant future where you will not be in the driver's seat as a listing agent and as a seller. Your reputation is one of the few things that you take with yourself through this industry from one deal to another. And the community, while it might seem large, a lot of agents, it's a relatively small and tight community. Your name will be known, and how you operate in the marketplace will be known. And so just be nice, even if you have all of that leverage. So how do you show up? Don't show up like you described right there. And it's like your reaction was perfect, because that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. So how else could you show up?
I'm just listing, be courteous, be a partner, we're professionals, and you have that culture that, you know, don't put in your listing, if we show it, you know, I hate that. It's like, aren't we in all this together? Yeah. we'll take
1%
it.
is the
Yeah.
issue.
So just to go there for one moment, this is a broker coming out of me, so if you put something in the private remarks of a listing saying that if we show your client, then the commission is reduced from 3% to 1%, number one, it has to be agreed to by the seller,
Right.
it's just gotta be in the listing agreement. And so, I challenge you to sit across the kitchen table from sellers and tell them like, hey, you know what, if I have to like come and show your house,
Yeah, like, do my job.
then I'm
Yeah,
not
right.
gonna offer a co-op. And so, you know, because that's totally inconvenient for me. I mean, I know you're paying me $20,000 for this. But I mean,
Yes.
like to come show
I
it
think
is
it's
gonna be
ridiculous.
terribly inconvenient, and so I'm just gonna like cut deep on the other side on that. So you cool with that? Can I put that in the listing agreement? I know that that's not the way you would present that. However, I mean, that if,
That's the way it is.
it is, and so I get the frustration. I totally know that there are agents out there that do not do a good job, not any of you. Fortunately, that's your competition, and so, you know, you have the ability to shine in this industry whenever you give great customer service, but don't shy away from being in control of the transaction and doing, like, I always want the smartest agent in the deal, writing the contract, controlling the negotiation, controlling the conversation, controlling the transaction. And I want the smartest agent in the deal to be you. Okay, the best trained, the most resources, the best equipped agent.
That is one of my top things that infuriates me, and particularly with my competition, my greatest competition, and how would you present that without, in a positive note, in a consultation?
Presented their route or presented they reduce the commission, or which piece of that are you talking
I'm
about?
saying present to them that they're probably talking to other agents, and if so, this is one of the things that I do differently than other agents. I'm always gonna be available to show their property, and just whether or not they have an agent, you know, but just going through that, I mean, how to best, without slamming the competition, because I just think that's wrong.
I always want to sell on my strengths, not on someone else's
Right,
weaknesses.
right.
And so making sure you tell them what you do different than other people will really get in their mind that some other people don't do. So if they feel strongly about what you said, they might ask that question of the other agent. It's challenging when you say, you know, other people in this community that you might get
Yeah,
communication from, you know,
And
and maybe a lot
highlight
of
the
postcards, you know, like, I
listings.
mean,
Yeah.
it would be difficult because that would be specifically targeting that particular agent. If they bring that agent up, you know, you can talk about the differences between you and them. I would, but I don't know that I would lead with that. I would lead with what your strengths are. And what sets you apart is totally fine, like, this sets me apart. Well, that means that other people don't do what you're saying that you do. If you say this sets me apart from other agents that you market in this thing. All right, so I do have this little, you know, I'm gonna have charts and graphs, I mean, because if I don't have some kind of a chart or graph, you would be very disappointed in me, and I think this is the only one in this conversation today, but you can see, look, you have to intellectually decide how you need to show up. This isn't just, I always show up as the nice guy. I always show up as the strong, assertive type. I always show up as like a bunch of information. So you have to be thoughtful about how do I need to show up to this negotiation. So we just go around the circle here, it's reserved on this side, asking a lot of questions, and an emotional display on the bottom. So reserve, assertive, logical, emotional. Reserve, assertive, logical, emotional. And there's these 4 quadrants. And so you just need to assess whatever negotiation you're walking into and really show up the way you feel like that particular circumstance requires of you. There are many times like, okay, let's look at the analytical reserved side. I very likely need to show up in the very beginning in kind of that number 1, that top left quadrant. because I'm collecting information. I need to know, what does my client want? What is the property like? What is the competition? What are things, I'm asking questions of the other agent, what's important to your client? I am asking. But then there might be a time in the negotiation where I cross this line and become less asking and more telling and assertive. Okay, and any one of these extremes is very rare that would be required of the situation. But as you guys have already said, some people just show up on an extreme as rude, a jerk, I've got all the leverage, forget you, my way the highway, I've got 10 behind you, ride it or get out. You know, I mean, like, there are people who show up that way. And then there's other people that show up super emotional. There's some people that show up completely non-emotional, logical, and there's some people that just, they can't get them to move at all or engage whatsoever. So just, there is a thoughtful process on how am I going to show up to this negotiation.
So I think it's follow through and follow up too.
Very important, which I would classify as communication.
Yes, because like whenever we receive 30 offers on a home, we, email everybody in a blind email. We are working with our seller as fast as we can. I can't tell you how many emails we get back. Thank you so much. Thanks for just letting me know you got my offer. And then we
The
send
bar
a
is
very,
really low.
yes, it's awful, it's awful.
Yes.
And then we send an email saying how much we appreciate the buyer's agents. We know it's hard out there. We value your time. We had 30 offers. Our seller went with another offer. We will get back with you if something changes. And I can't tell you how many times, just because we go out of our way to acknowledge how hard they're working and how hard it is out there for buyer's agents right now. How many of them email back and say, that's the nicest email I've ever got. Thank you for letting me know what was going on. And I can tell how many times I've had to go back to that offer number 2 that was in second place.
Yeah, right.
And those people already appreciate how we work, and you jump right into that second offer when you need to because you were kind and you followed up. And I mean, that's still part of negotiation.
Where if you had defended them and then
Or not responded at all.
or not responded at all, then they still would have accepted it.
Well, I don't
Because
know.
that's the market we were in. However, they would have said, and whenever they didn't have leverage, because they still had only 1% at that point, and they said yes.
Yeah,
even
or
though
they could
still
come
felt
back
like,
at a lower price.
So look, you have to make a conscious decision how you show up. And then after making that conscious decision how you show up, you also need to consciously decide how you need to show up throughout the negotiation. Because it's generally not a one and done deal. It's usually a conversation over a period of time. And so that is, and you have to be mindful of how you show up. Okay, so I have mistakes that you make in negotiations can make, and then best practices. So we're just gonna hit each, but I thought like this is the best way for us to discuss this is, hey, here are the don't do's, and then here are the do's. So we'll get into the 7 biggest mistakes, and if there are 8 or 9, forgive me, I kept going. Oh, yeah, that too. So in fact, I showed this to Nick, and I was like, hey, can you take a look at this? Just let me go. She goes, well, you know there are 7, not 6. And I was like, oh yeah, you know there are 8, not 6. So there's a handful of things up here. I don't know if that. This is it. Getting emotional. Do not get emotional. When you put your own emotions into a negotiation, it's weakness. You taint the negotiation, and you have conversations and make decisions that are not in the best interest of your client. It's one of the biggest killers of good negotiation is when you let emotions get into it. Like, that person was mean. I don't like them, so now screw them, or like, I'm not going to whatever. And it's like, well, but your client right here, we just talked about this scenario right here, number 2. So they're very nice, and I know that you sent a great email. Let's say you didn't, and you were somebody who gave them the big or 0 communication whatsoever. And then that person came back, and you came back to them, and they got emotional. You were mean to me, so forget it. That's emotional. That's an emotional response to negotiation. But did the client still want the property? Yes, the client could care less whether they were mean to you. They want the house. So when you let emotions get into that, either good emotions or bad, or like, oh, I just love these people who came to look at the house, they were amazing, Ms. Rizzo, you really, I took it off, you need to take that, because they were just so sweet, awesome, amazing. Their emotions, so they can be negative emotions, they can be positive emotions, they can be angry, mad, sad, hurt. You know, any one of those things that creeps into a negotiation is going to kill your ability to properly negotiate and get your client's best interests achieved. Some of these kind of seem similar, but they're not. Get principled. Well, that is a good price. I was able to justify that. They should have negotiated more. They made a bad call on such and such. Well, principal issue is they shouldn't reduce my commission if I was the one that showed them that. Okay, just like a really example right here we just talked about. That's principle. That's wrong. It's wrong what they're doing. It's not the right path. It's not the right etiquette. It's not. They shouldn't have done that. It's like.
It's indignant.
Pardon me?
Getting indignant, right?
Yes. You know, it's like, dang it. That's not how we do it. You know, it's like I don't play poker very often, and so whenever there've been a couple of times I've done like a charity thing or whatever, and I'm kind of crazy on the what is the one where they put them in the middle and Texas Hold'em, and then at towards the end, and I'm like still in and betting when I really shouldn't be, you know, and somebody loses to me and they're like, you should have never held those cards and bet with that, you know. Well, that's just like its principle. The principle is that I should have folded that and not bet that. But you know, I caught some full house on the river or whatever. You know, like so that was the person's principle because no person that knows what they're doing would ever have held and bet that hand. So their principle. Same thing in real estate. You're going to run into people that just don't know their lines. They don't know what their next step should be, and it will surprise you. You can be principled about it, either from I don't like what they're doing to me, or don't they know they shouldn't do that? Any of those things, you can't get principled. So because when you go up on principle, then you snuff out negotiation, and this convergence, the meeting of the minds, this coming to a mutually acceptable agreement ends when either or both parties get principled. Not only you, but you have to really, really, really protect your client from getting principled. And so your client will end up wanting to get principled or emotional or emotional. And you have to be able to help them navigate that and have conversations with them like, look, I know that you don't like this, and I understand that, you know, it's easy to go up on principle on this issue. You know, we can give a little bit on this and get this house for you, and in a couple of months from now, this will just be a story that you tell about how you bought this house. Or if we go up on principle, we might lose this one, and then you might never find another one like it that meets the criteria that we talked about. I understand that. So, you know, it's like you need to be able to have these conversations with your client to help bring that perspective to negotiation. When your client gets principled, you're negotiating with them, and you yourself need to not get principled. One of the things that we do is, you know, like you guys are in a high training oriented culture. So, you know, broker, contract class, you know, all of the communication, negotiations, all these things. And so it's easy for you to show up and on the other side is a not well-trained person, and you can go up on principle or get emotional at that person. You just know that that will kill emotions, and principle will kill negotiations. Allowing ego to surface. So again, sounds kind of principled, but different. I've been doing this a long time, and let me tell you something, you know, or don't they know that we got 30 offers? You know, like, so when anytime ego enters in and you feel like you want to puff your chest out a little bit and be like, I know what I'm talking about, then check that. And just, by the way, a lot of these things are just life things. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like a lot of these negotiation things are just life things. And so If you feel like that you're blowing up on principle, if you feel like you're getting emotional, if you feel like ego is entering into the conversation, you've got to check that. Take that step back, remove those things, remember what you're here for and who you're serving.
I have a question. We have in our situation with a house in Swanee where it's interesting, there's something happening in the culture where everybody thinks it's okay to show up either an hour after your appointment time, 3 hours after your appointment time, knock on your elderly seller's door and want to show the home. This is a problem we've never had like this before. And it's happening to this one particular seller who happened to needs some time to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But she's doing it quick. I mean, if you schedule an hour ahead, she'll make it happen. So she called me frantic one time and I called the agent and just said, this is not okay. You guys are 3 hours late. It's not okay. It takes 2 clicks of the button to go into showing time and just reschedule and let us know. And I was stern because I was getting frustrated because we've had this now happen a couple times and my poor seller's thinking this is the norm and it's really not. I'm like, why is this happening to her house? So after I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but also think in my mind, kind of on the principal one, you know, I didn't want to be too stern, but I felt like I needed to tell the agents, this is not okay. You know, certain parts of town, you show up and not on your time, somebody, you might get shot, really. It's not okay. So in that case, you know, would you have done it the same way? Would you have called and said it's not okay to show up late? I mean, I don't think some of these people are being trained properly.
So let me give you, it's a good example, and let me give you a thought. Anytime that as an agent on the other side, you think, I need to teach this agent something, you might be showing up not with one of these.
Oh, I was definitely showing up with one principle because
ego.
I think it's wrong.
Right, and so,
Yeah.
so it's okay to give suggestions to the other side. Like, look, if your seller was harmed, by all means, represent your seller right. You can't show the property, you know, you're 3 hours late, that is an inconvenience and it's not right. Okay, it's totally fine. But thinking that like this is something going on in the marketplace and now I'm going to go change the market by teaching one agent at a time that they're screwing up is probably not the right, you know, like, because what if that agent had the buyer for you? Let's say you have,
Right.
let's say you don't have 99.1, which we're shifting quite rapidly into more of a 70-30 right now, I would think. We're probably in the 70-30 on the hang up about this. And so, yes, that agent did not follow procedure properly, and that agent might have the buyer that is right for your seller.
And all that went through my mind.
And so by having a conversation that's respectful of that person, but also lets them know, hey, my seller needs more time. They cannot do a 3 hour late. Please reschedule. If you're not sure how to do that, I'm more than happy to help you. See, like.
And I probably was not that. I was trying to be kind, but out of my frustration of walking around Costco with my seller about in tears and her wanting me to call them because the agent's standing in the front yard with the client and she doesn't, you know.
So your seller,
I feel like I'm a
your
little
seller's
emotional principal and all that.
Yeah, all three of them. And look,
Been there, done that.
when your
We all have.
seller is victim to one or multiples of these things, it's our responsibility, and it's in the next slide, to bring the calm.
Yes,
Okay,
it's true.
so it's my responsibility in this to bring the calm. And when I fall victim to any or all of these, then I'm bringing chaos, not calm.
Right.
And I'm throwing fuel, I'm throwing gasoline on this fire instead of throwing water on it. I'm not diffusing the situation, I'm expanding it, I'm whipping it up. And so.
I was calm with my client, but probably not so much with the agent that.
And calming your client down is good, but you know, going and taking a pound of flesh out of the other agent probably is not best long-term. It might feel good.
Yeah.
You know, we had an agent show up to one of our listings the other day who, listing went under contract one day. It's the next day and we're doing the paperwork and changing it and whatever, and it wasn't very long at all, but it wasn't under contract. But they did switch the showing time to where it was appointment only, and if they would have called, then they would have known that the next day our administrative team would have gotten into the office and changed it, whatever. So this agent shows up at the house. There's a Ring doorbell, and the seller is gardening. And so the agent says, hey, can we look at your house? And he says, no, they just went under contract and it took us 3 months, 2 months to get under contract, something like that. And he says, well, let me just tell you, your agent is not professional. And I've been trying to show this, and he called literally 20 minutes before he was in the neighborhood. And then, and saw it, and then tried to schedule and got pissed that there wasn't an immediate callback. Got there, seller's out, said it was under contract, and he blew up. He says, I'm an agent, and not every agent that's licensed is professional. So, and Nikki does this.
What?
Oh,
All
wow.
on the Ring doorbell, okay?
Oh, boy.
So, and this is a super quick story, but so Nikki's like, hey, she called me, hey, we got a problem with one of the listings, and she gave me the guy's information. So I began to look the guy up. He's not even a licensed agent.
Oh,
Are
wow.
you kidding me?
He's licensed in Florida.
Oh, my
His
word.
wife is an agent here. He just moved here and he's going through the process. And so he's using her app to get in and out of properties and doing all of this garbage
Right.
on the front lawn with a Ring doorbell. So, I could have called him and given him the what for. And that's what I wanted to do because, number one, it was our business and our client. Number two, it's my wife.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of all of these buttons that you start pressing when it's someone you love and care about. But I reached out to the broker of the firm that he said he was representing. Hey, I need your help on something, and that is the way I always approach broker to broker is, hey, I need your help on something. Got this situation, here's what happened. The guy on Ring doorbell camera, which, we kind of all know that we're on video these days. But, oddly enough, I went to research this agent. I can't even find that this agent is affiliated with you or that they're an agent at all in Georgia. So I don't know if you can help me with that. I sure would appreciate it. And everything I'm saying is very nice, void of any of these things. But that broker knew exactly what I was saying. Like, you have someone out there that is doing this, and your agent is giving access to a non-licensed person. That non-licensed person is now saying they represent their brokerage and being an idiot in the front lawn to my client. And by the way, talking bad about one of my agents, who's also my wife. And so like all of those things together, but you see how I showed up to that. She called me back mortified. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. This is who he is. This is what's going on. I have spoken with him, blah, 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 blah. And so it just that was a negotiation too. Like, I could have shown up with any one of these and it would have been a completely different, but you know what? I need the relationship with that other broker. Because at some point in time, not any of you in this class, but some agent that's licensed with our company might do the wrong thing. And then that person's calling me saying, I need your help on something. You know what I'm saying? Like, so so don't allow ego to enter in. Okay, we're gonna move on. Not asking questions. You guys hit this in the beginning, you're so right. You have to ask questions. If you don't have a lot of the parameters of the negotiation, how can you properly navigate it? It blows my mind when an offer shows up and we've never, ever talked to anyone. It blows my mind. I mean, let me ask you something. What do sellers want?
Highest price.
Not always, it can all
Yeah.
be different,
No.
temporary occupancy, term, they're all different.
Price is important.
The price is important, sure.
Price is one of their parameters. Price is very important. It's one of the main things we talk about. It's not the only thing. So what do sellers want? The answer is, I don't know, but what does this seller want? That I've got a buyer that I want to control this property. How do I know what this seller wants? Certainly don't show up in the front yard and call their agent an idiot. But what does this seller want? You talk to the listing agent. I understand, I get it. Many of you are thinking right now, well, if they answer the phone, if they call me back, they took 30 offers and whatever. You still have to attempt, okay? Because the environment we were in for the last 24 months is not the environment we're going to be in for the next 24 months. These are principles that underline all of your time in this industry through different marketplaces. Ask questions. Do not let the circumstances of the last 24 months take you away from calling and saying, you know, hey, Michelle, it's Jason, yeah, I've got a buyer, it was the one that we showed earlier today. Listen, I just want to find out what's most important to your seller. They're looking for a quick close, they're looking for, have you had other offers before? You know, by the way, you know, they were looking at that pool table, have you guys talked about that? You know, I mean, it's just having that conversation. And let me tell you, agents on the other side, when you talk to them, will give the farm up. You would be shocked at how much another agent will tell you and compromise their client's position just because they want the deal closed. I know the price is $450, but we had an offer at $410 and my seller wanted to go $412 and they walked away. And so I know we're $450, but like we just were negotiating at $412. Okay? And you have in your hands an offer that's $440 and you're like, thank you for telling me that. And I'm going to $412,
Right.
give you exactly what you want.
Yep.
Okay? Like that agent did not represent their seller the best way, but you asked the question, they just blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. You will, number one, understand what you need to do in negotiation to meet the desires of the other party to come closer to a meeting of the minds. And you know, you'll be able to know what they want and you'll be able to better negotiate when you're asking those questions. And you're also establishing communication with the other person because, you know, the agent is going to impact the seller's and buyer's perception of whatever document sitting in front of them. And so when you can build good rapport with the other agent and ask those questions, many times they will better represent, whether buyer or seller, they'll better represent the potential of that transaction that they're faced with, that they're looking at. All right, so then falls right into don't reveal too much. So while other agents will do that, you don't do that. Okay, so there is no absolute bottom line to this. This is the finesse part. Somebody said art, I think art was in the thing, you know, this is like art of the whatever. There is a finesse to this piece of it, which is how much should I tell? How much can I divulge? What would, in this negotiation, what could I kind of throw out there to draw you closer? Okay, and so that is a finesse. It is something you just have to feel. The default on many agents is blah, 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 but they tell all they know and will significantly, severely compromise their client's ability to negotiate in their position. So don't be that person. Negotiating for me instead of the client. This again, it's like, I want this deal to work. I need this commission. I mean, there are many different ways that you can get involved, that you can fall into the trap rather, of negotiating on behalf of yourself and not. And this also falls right back to, you know, like, well, I could get a better price, but you lose the house, you know. And then the last one is not being prepared for the negotiations. So going into it, understanding, like a scenario that we were just talking about the other day was like appraisals or due diligence or unilateral right to extend, any one of those things. If you're not prepared and you don't know what your client's rights are within an agreement and what the other party's rights are within the agreement, then you are not prepared for that negotiation. When you have to make that phone call and say, this happened, that didn't happen, this is now going to impact our transaction, let's find a path forward through this. If you haven't prepared yourself for that conversation, then you're not doing your job, you're committing malpractice. You don't get a pass at that. You have to know what the documents say. You're not an attorney, but these are legal documents that bind our clients in a very, very high dollar transaction to another party, and you've got to know what they say. You can't give legal advice, but you can say, well, the seller has this many days to do this. You have this many days to do that. You can most certainly give information to your client that what's in the agreement that they signed. So be aware of that. Be aware of market conditions. Be aware of value. Be aware of sold property. Be aware of, just be prepared for the negotiation. And so when you're not prepared for the negotiation, then you're not doing your job for your client. Okay, so 10, let's see if there are 10. I think there were 7 of those, so let's see if there are 10. And some of these are just like right back to what the don'ts, but do's. And first one is ask questions and listen to the answers. Ask questions of who, or of whom, or whatever. Like there's a proper way to say it. Ask questions. Who are you asking questions of?
You want to know from the seller, if you've got the buyer, you want to ask questions of the seller.
Yes.
To understand what their intentions
True.
and goals are.
I agree with you completely. Who else?
Your client.
Yes. Your client. Ask questions of your client. Yes. Who else?
The lender.
The lender, yes.
Absolutely.
Ask questions, listen to the answers. What about if you're in a changing value market and you're on either side of a transaction and there are 2 things under contract in the neighborhood?
Other agents.
Is there valuable information in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Leona, what are you under contract at? On that property? Can you share with me what you're under contract? I don't know. Okay, well, a lot of times they'll say $459 with no closing costs, and you're like, thank you for telling me all of that.
Right.
Or like, are you above or below this price? You can begin to narrow some of that down, but you're asking questions. You're being prepared. You're asking questions. You're getting the information that you need to be able to help your seller buyer make an informed decision. Ask questions. Do your research. Be prepared. And again, just like the obvious one is of that co-op agent, whichever side. Like, what's most important to your client? Know what's most important to your client. Ask what's most important to their client. You have a higher likelihood of crafting an offer and negotiation that will come to an agreement. Expect problems, expect to win. My man Phil Benelli did our awards thing this year, and in his talk with you guys, he made this statement: expect problems, expect to win. There's very few negotiations that you just sail through, and there's no challenge, hiccup, issue, whatever. You get paid large amounts of money to navigate these highly volatile, difficult, challenging scenarios, and to show up with a full, complete toolbox. And so when you have a complete toolbox, you have experiences, you know what you know what you don't know, you know the difference between the two, and you know where your resources are. When you have that lit, expect problems and expect to win. Just know it's gonna work out. I expect this to work out. I expect to win, and expect problems, expect to win. I said this before, bring calm to the situation. I cannot tell you how many situations I run into where it is the agent being an idiot. And the agent is running around with a bucket full of gasoline and matches. Like not even pouring gas on a fire, but starting fires, then pouring their own gasoline on it. Like, bring calm to the situation. Do not throw gasoline on it. And so like I said, there are a lot of agents running around with matches and gasoline. So bring calm to the situation. Price is not the only term. So an offer is the sum of all of its parts. An agreement is the sum of all of its parts. So you have to be able to understand, and again, this goes right back to the communication piece, and knowing what your client wants, being able to find out what their client wants, and understanding that, because we get hyper focused on price, when in any financial transaction, price and terms are the two things that together make up the deal. Price and terms. So don't ever get fixated on one thing, and do your best to encourage your clients not to get completely fixated on one thing, and understand it is the sum of all of its parts. And then don't give up. Start complicated and negotiate to simplify. So this sum of all of its parts is this: start complicated and negotiate to simplify. Here's what this means. If I have 3 things that my client is stuck on, they are like adamant about these 3 things, then I'm going to start complicated with as many things in this negotiation that I feel this situation can bear. Because you can go in the other direction and put together such a complicated offer that the agent on the other side is saying, I do not want to deal with this person, okay? Like they went to the special stipulations thing in the GAR forms package and just chose 30 of them, and we have 3 extra pages, and there's just no way, this is the agent's first deal and their only deal, and they're gonna drive me nuts, no. So, but you just have to know that start complicated, so if there's 2 things, 3 things, put in 6 things, and then work and negotiate to simplify by taking away the things that are least important to your client and ending on the things that are most important to your client. It's a critical strategy in negotiation, is to start complicated and then negotiate to simplify.
Especially on the amendment to address concerns, I feel like.
To address
I
concerns.
feel like it's crucial in that specific area.
My favorite amendment to address concerns is see inspection report. Okay, I see it. Don't be that person. So start complicated and negotiate to simplify, and then don't give up more than you have to. So that's on the asking side, start complicated. And then on the other side is don't give up more than you have to. And here's what I'm talking about with this, is again, right back to the 450, 412 thing. Yeah, here's the other thing, don't give up more than you have to. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Well, the buyer and seller are stuck, so I'm just gonna reduce 10,000 off my commission.
Oh.
No.
That's your first answer? Like, how many times have you been back and forth? How much did these people get, but how much did they get? Where is their bottom line? How you know, an agent will just like immediately say, okay, I'll do over 2%. And immediately cut themselves. And generally that happens when an agent doesn't completely believe in the value that they bring to the client. And so work to make sure that you understand how, number one, work to make sure you are valuable to your client. And then understand and believe that in such a way that you are not just giving that up immediately. So giving up immediately, giving up your client's position immediately, giving up more than you have to, not understanding that this is one of the many things the other side is throwing in, that these 5 things could go away. And so it goes right back to asking questions. How important is that thing to your client? And many times the other agent, well, I mean, they just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, great. Yeah. So when you're asking those questions and not giving up more than you have to, then you're representing your client best. Don't give up more than you have to. So the culture of negotiations is you really do need to let them win just a little bit. And that also is a product of starting complicated and negotiating to simplify. Because when you negotiate to simplify, you are moving in their direction a little bit. I always call it good faith negotiation. And so when I'm in a position of strength in a negotiation and I have the leverage, then many times, I'll say something like, you know what, they understand negotiation. There's probably a little bit of wiggle room, but I'm talking hundreds, not thousands. So they're gonna make a good faith negotiation to move to your side just a little bit, but just know it's not gonna be a lot. So when I set that up that way, well, then the other person is not coming asking 10,000 off. They know it's hundreds, not thousands. It gives a framework, but they also know that we're not saying, line in the sand, right here, we're not doing So don't even ask me, you know? Because then you're bowing up, and that will push people away. Where if you're saying, you know, we're like flexible to here, you know, that's not much, but it's flexible. And so, you know, just let them win a little. People want to win. I want to win, you want to win, we want to win. So you got to be able to let them win a little bit. And you have to also lead your clients to understand that concept too. Understand you're super rigid about this. I get this, what they might walk away over this. We might need to just let them win a little bit. You know, their ego might be at play in this now. They might be bowed up on principle, and they may be a little emotional. So let's let them win a little bit. So a lot of the things I have in here are also scripts that you can use, language that you can use in negotiation, and bring those things. When you make that statement, many times your client will say, you're right, I get it. I understand everything you just said, and you know, I'm probably blowing up on principle a little bit too, so, okay. Let's move this much, you know? Or they could just be saying, no, heck no, you know? And then you go do what your client wants, you know? This is another one, understand cultural negotiation styles.
It's tough.
Yes, are there different cultural negotiation styles? Yes, there's a book called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, or something like that. It's a negotiation book with different cultures and how different cultures generally will tend to negotiate. And so if you need to know that going in and be able to properly navigate, because many times if someone shows up with a different cultural negotiation style, many times it can be offensive, because again, it's kind of back to, shouldn't have held those cards to the river, you know, like that's not how we do it here. But when it's not ignorance or lack of preparation in that person's part, it's just their culture. So be aware of that. Be aware of that. And silence is powerful. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. Silence is powerful. Whether you're in a verbal negotiation or electronic somehow, find the right time, appropriately placed. Silence is very powerful and will cause people to make movement that they wouldn't if you were still talking. Now, if you go completely radio silence, a lot of times they leave, they go somewhere else, they take another offer. So it has to be appropriately placed, but do not miss this powerful tool in your toolbox. And be comfortable with the silence. Ask a question and shut up. Make a counteroffer and be quiet. State your client's position and be quiet. Let the person talk. I promise you, most people are uncomfortable with silence. And if you make the statement and you shut your mouth, just rest in it. So you just rest in it. That person, most of the time, will begin to talk. And many times, what they say to break the silence will give up a position. Just understand that and use it appropriately. Silence is powerful. Don't overuse it because it's weird. Time is your enemy. This is my first broker, Richard Williams. I started this business in '96 in Century 21, and Richard Williams, it's one of the best lessons he ever taught me is time is your enemy. So don't put off tomorrow what you should do today. Don't put off a couple of hours from now calling that person back when you can call them back right away. Time is your enemy in this business. Time is your enemy in negotiations. And I know that I just told you to silence is powerful. So that is a break in the communication where you're using timing potentially to your advantage. But when you just are not mindful of time, time will be your enemy. And I promise you, like I have said this so many times in my career where I delayed something that I should not have delayed, and it resulted like in something bad. And I've said, like I hear Richard Williams in my head, time is your enemy. Time is your enemy. Time is your enemy. So just know that time is your enemy, be mindful of that, and work expeditiously through these things. Don't procrastinate while you're in negotiation. Keep things moving, keep communication open. Don't blah, 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 blah. Remember all of the other things that I've said, and then make sure that you know that time is your enemy. So those are 10 things. You've got the 7 strategies, or the 7 things don't do. You've got the 10 winning strategies. These are just mindset things that you need to make sure that you are thoughtful and purposeful when you enter negotiations, because many times what happens is you're just trying to win a deal, you're not prepared, you're not thinking about these things, and you're just winging it through the transaction, and you're hitting a lot. Oh, that's good. You're hitting a lot of these, because when you're just mindlessly going through a negotiation, the likelihood is you're going to land on some of these don't do's. Purposefully know that you need to be doing the winning strategies, and negotiation is something that you get better at over time too. So make sure that you're practicing, and also don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to bounce things off of some of your counterparts, colleagues around here. This situation happened. Here's what they came back with. What would you do in that situation? You know, just like you just did earlier. Like, this is a situation. This is what happened. I don't know. I'm not sure I handled it the best way. So you guys talk about that. This is a skill that you're going to need. And like I said, all these things are also just good life skills for relationships and working with people. Anything y'all would add? Any of that? Thoughts, comments, questions?
What was the name of that book again?
Kiss, bow, or shake hands. It's just like I read that maybe 20 years ago. It's just a super quick, easy read about cultural styles of negotiation. And you just can't overlook that. All right, well, thank y'all for spending an hour with me. I think there's something else in this room in the next 3 minutes. So you can stay for that, or you can turn the room, but I appreciate you guys hanging out with me.
Thanks, Dave.